All right, welcome back to the Town of Strathmore Council musical. We're starting again at 7:04, and just before we get started, I wanted to make a quick statement. I've talked with council about this, and I know that today is the day of legalization of cannabis in Canada, and I just wanted to explain that Strathmore is very much aware of it and involved in it, and we're looking for and going through a reasonable process. We want to hear our citizens and hear everyone involved. We have decided that it's discretionary use, and we feel that everyone should have an opportunity to speak and be heard, and we do have a process to follow. We have some bylaws coming forward tonight concerning public consumption of cannabis, and at a very near date, there will be one coming forward regarding business license fees regarding that. So we are in the process of moving forward, but we also want to do our due diligence and do the right thing for the vast majority of the public in Strathmore. So just wanted to say that. Now moving on to the confirmation of agenda. Do any councillors have any emergent items tonight? Seeing none. Anything from administration that's emergent? Okay. Any recognitions or presentations tonight? I don't think we do. And that brings us to delegations. We have tonight. Oh, sorry. Thank you. That's why I wanted. We're a little later on. We're going to be talking about seating arrangements, and we should be doing that first, shouldn't we?
Your Worship, I would suggest holding your organizational meeting just after the regular council meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And luckily, Councillor Corbeil is right near me to keep me in line, which is going to be part of the later part of the meeting where we decide on seating arrangements. So we're looking for a motion, Councillor Corbeil.
I move the council adopt the minutes of the October 3rd, 2018 regular, I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. And that brings us tonight's delegation. Item 4.1 on your package, Bow Valley College. If you'd like to come forward to the microphones and introduce yourselves. And just before we start, we have to always remind everyone who comes as a delegation, I'm sure you're aware already, you have a 10-minute time allotment for presentation, and then there may be questions and discussion following your presentation. So welcome again tonight.
Thank you. To start off, I'd like to just say thank you to Your Worship, council members, and also the town for allowing us to present on behalf of Bow Valley College tonight. We just want to start off with explaining what it is that we're here to address. We are putting in an application for CARES funding, and with that we wanted to explain a little bit about the history and where Bow Valley College has been and seated in Strathmore. And so we did start off in 2014 in a one-room space in the FCSS Center, and we had 6 learners at that time. And fast-tracked to 2017 to 18, the college committed $400,000 as well as the federal government towards building and renovating a brand-new campus space. At that time, we had 13 practical nurse learners enrolled, 5 medical office and health unit clerk learners, 13 healthcare aid learners, and we have since tested 20 Canadian language benchmark learners, and so you can see the magnitude of what the college has offered since 2014. And then we get to now, and that is the opening of the Strathmore Entrepreneur Centre. It has its grand opening or inauguration event, which happened in September. We have developed the business plan. We have hired a project officer, Jen Neufeld, and we've had the inauguration event. I guess I forgot to tell who we were, didn't I? I'm sorry. So I am Cara Dory. I'm the manager for the Airdrie and Strathmore campus, and this is Jen Neufeld, the project officer. Sorry about that. I have met a lot of you, but apologize. And so some of the events that we've hosted at the college, we did the Newsy Neighbor event. We had close to 150 people through the center touring, did some prize draws, and we had a great response from the community for that. This is Your Worship presenting at our inauguration event, and thank you again for doing that. We had our president, Lord Joe Gunther, as well as the Honorable Marlon Schmidt present. And we had an excellent ceremony by some drummers from Siksika. So the event was very, very powerful and well received. And this is a little bit of a video from the event itself.
Thank you so much. The Bow Valley College Strathmore campus is a hub not only for this community, but also for the surrounding area, including the Siksika First Nation. I was delighted to learn that in cooperation with the Siksika Employment and Training Services, the Bow Valley College Strathmore campus hosted 16 Siksika youth recently as students for a day. This kind of joint effort to engage Indigenous youth is vital for opening pathways to upskilling and career training that benefits individuals, families, and communities. For our renewed and enhanced presence here, we hope to strengthen our ties, increase engagement, and build capacity together as we walk in the spirit of reconciliation. I'd like to recognize and thank the Government of Canada for its commitment of nearly $400,000 to match funding that enabled the development of the Bow Valley College Strathmore campus. With the support of the federal government, Bow Valley College optimized the moment to enhance local access to education and training necessary to develop a capable and resilient labor force. More than ever before, adults in search of labor force pathways and entrepreneurial development can access the training they need and to participate fully in the local economy. Thank you to our federal government partners for seeing the need and investing in access to adult education in Strathmore and the surrounding communities.
So I'm just going to take over and explain a little bit about our project. The Strathmore Entrepreneur Centre and what we're calling the Airdrie Entrepreneur Centre in short, you can see on the slide in front of you. So there's several different phases. Phase 1 is kind of where we have come to since the beginning of this year. From moving into the new campus, building a business plan, creating operational systems, and testing our events, our memberships, and our space rentals. That brings us to October 31st, which is the CARES application deadline. And the project going forward then will be for phase 2, 3, 4, and 5. Phase 2 is to develop the Strathmore Entrepreneur Centre further by building membership, growing the quantity of workshops, marketing the centre a little bit more in the community, as well as creating an entrepreneurial training program. Phase 3 is to put a business plan in place, for the Airdrie Entrepreneur Centre, utilizing the learnings that we have had from Strathmore, and to look forward to what might happen in Airdrie. Phase 4 is refining the Strathmore Centre, refining the systems, assuming we have a stronger membership growing there and that some of those businesses, having been part of that already, may even be ready to move into a larger space in the community, still being able to tap into the network and the hub that we are developing in Strathmore. And then phase 5 would be initiating the Airdrie Centre, moving into a potentially new campus there, and creating operational systems and developing some of the entrepreneurial training in Airdrie. So the CARES project itself is to fund those phases, phase 2 and 4 for Strathmore, and 3 and 5 for Airdrie.
So this is a breakdown of the project expense. You all were provided that when we gave the outline of it. So specifically with Strathmore, we're looking to have further support in terms of operational and having a program administration support for the center to achieve a lot of the objectives of the CARES grant, which include marketing, website development, speaker workshop series, and the rest of those items listed. This is the actual project funding total. So the total project value is $260,000. It is 50% matching, so 10,000 of that will be in-kind donations from various speakers, the college itself, and the contribution for the space. And Bow Valley College has committed another $50,000 towards moving this forward in the phases that we've outlined. And so has the City of Airdrie committed $30,000 to the project, and so we need confirmation as to whether the town will commit the 40,000 by October 31st. The CARES project itself, what we did is to align it with some of the council's strategic priorities that you have outlined for 2018 to 2021. The first one being financial sustainability and the value for your money. With the investment, if the town does invest the $40,000, it automatically gets another $40,000 in matching funds from the CARES grant. And that it will continue to support the growth of the Entrepreneur Centre, creating a natural training program. We will be leveraging Craig Elias, who is an entrepreneur in residence for the college, as well as the Smart Start program, which was created by Airdrie to create a training program for Strathmore. We will have lots of opportunity to collaborate with the town, the future economic development officer that you plan on hiring, and we will be leveraging the City of Airdrie's economic development and learnings, because anybody who knows Kent and his team, they have an excellent economic development strategy, one of the fastest growing cities in Canada for years, so we can leverage that for the town as well.
The next strategic priority that we're aligning with is that of community development. The college has been in support of the downtown revitalization project in being the first anchor tenant in the Strathmore Centre, and we're finding we're getting a lot of traffic coming in off the sidewalk and from the community, just checking us out and seeing what's going on. Creation of local jobs through this, we intend to create at least one more full-time job. Liaise with the new economic development to further develop relationships within the business community and enhance the business retention and growth within the region, and then contribute to future economic development strategies as they be identified by the town going forward. And then finally, to support the town of Strathmore's identity in economic growth through the initiation of what we're calling an economic resource website, similar maybe to this one that Airdrie has, where it's a one-stop shop for anybody looking to start a business, identifies a variety of different factors that they might need to consider going forward to make that decision whether to invest and start a business in this community.
And lastly, the strategic priority that we feel this project aligns with is the communication and collaboration. Bow Valley College is continually developing positive relationships with Siksika, Wheatland County, Community Futures, other organizations in town. We have the opportunities for knowledge sharing, mentorship, and relationship building, and we would like Strathmore to be a hub that attracts entrepreneurs from across Alberta, and we feel that this project will help to accomplish that.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments? Councillor Cox?
Councillor Peterson was ahead of me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Your Worship, I just had my microphone down. Thank you. So I just I have 4 questions, and they relate to the existing partnerships in the community, and so I have questions around that. The first one is my ongoing concern with Siksika. So I just want to clarify. So you've had ongoing cooperation from Daniel Stimson and Carrie Ann Backfat at Siksika?
We have been working specifically at this time with the employment training services with Erwin and his group in terms of bringing employment training to Siksika.
So Danny Stimson's in charge of employment and training?
Yes, so.
So you're working with Erwin Bear Chief?
Correct.
So you're working with Prospect?
Yes, we are, yeah.
So then your partnership is with Prospect here in town?
We've been working with them as well, yes.
So what's that's the second question. So what's the nature of your partnership with Prospect Employment Services? Because I see a bit of an overlap.
We actually have been working on a couple of different things with Prospect, mostly training employment for some people that are not having the skill set for getting employed, and specifically they've highlighted that about 67% of their clients are missing key things such as computer applications, and those are things that we're looking at working with them on. That has been our first talks at this point.
Okay.
And this specifically is for the Entrepreneur Centre, in providing support for the training and business development side of it. That we have relationships with a liaison for Business Link, who does Indigenous training, so we're looking at opportunities to provide,
Somebody from Siksika through Business Link?
Yes.
yeah,
Holly.
yeah, Holly.
Spurks.
Yeah.
Albers.
Holly who?
Albers.
I'll have to get her name for you after.
Not Siksika. And so then my follow-up question from that is, what kind of a relationship you've established with Old Sun Community College? Because they were the ones that were initially very, very concerned about having zero consultation from Bow Valley College at the outset of the original grant, before your time. But they were extremely concerned about the zero consultation that happened, even though you used Siksika demographics in your grant funding, you never consulted Old Sun Community College, and it is a similar batch of money. So I guess I want to know where that stands at this point.
At this point, we are actually, Erwin also does work with Old Sun as well.
He works inside Old Sun, but he actually works for Prospect.
And so
Yeah,
what we're
yeah,
doing is we're working with him, and we've been talking about some things with regards to, first of all, we're not overlapping anything that is being offered, so.
Yeah, they would disagree respectfully with that.
Okay. For instance, high school upgrading, we've been speaking with them
Yes.
with, not targeting programs that they are already offering, and really just trying to move forward past this grant application and what caused it. We really are wanting to move forward, and I have also spoken with Amelia as well to move that forward, but we're just doing one at a time, and so right now it is with employment services.
And then my next question is, what kind of a partnership or consultation has gone on with Community Futures?
We work with Community Futures on all of our
Supporting each other's
Yeah.
events.
events.
Because they have an entrepreneurial program, or they have in the past.
Yep.
So is this not an overlap of services in this
No,
regard as
and-
well?
And what we see is developing this ecosystem of resources. So we don't need to be the trainer for everything, but we can help identify what already exists in this community and then leverage what people are already doing. There's no point to duplicate efforts, but rather partnership and collaborate with those other organizations. So that's our intent.
And my final question is, what kind of a partnership you've built with Wheatland Community Adult Education? Because a lot of what you're doing in terms of the training was their book of business?
Are you talking, Wheatland Further Ed?
Yes, Wheatland Further Ed, sorry,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, we have been in talks with Wheatland Further Ed since we started, and again, the intent is not to offer, especially with the entrepreneur side, which is what we're talking about here, offering anything that would cross over into their territory. We are specifically looking at business training, things that, for instance, we've been Business Link, we're doing social media marketing, we're doing things that will not cross over into the territories of other organizations. That's not what we're doing.
Wheatland Further Education believes that's not the case, am I correct?
I'm not sure.
That's certainly what's been communicated to me. And so I think that there is some confusion. I agree that you might be a different book of business, but at this time it looks like there's a lot of usurping and a lack of cooperation and collaboration. And when you look at your board and what's listed, and you look in their catalog and what's listed, it looks like a duplication of services, even though you might be on a different level. My final comment regarding their question regarding this is, so Bow Valley College, does Bow Valley College make a profit from what they're doing?
At this time, no.
But your intent is to have profit?
Not a profit. We are not a
You're a not-for-profit, okay.
That's correct. We are trying to recover costs that we've invested.
So
Partly.
what I see in terms of when I look at comparatives to Community Futures programs, to Wheatland Further Education, to programs allotted on reserve, to Siksika Student and Youth Initiative, I see these are government grant-directed programs where there is little or no cost to the person involved. And so I'm wondering if Bow Valley College will do the same, if they'll match that understanding. I guess I'd like to see a cost layout. I'd like to see a
There's a little bit
cost
of
layout.
disconnect between what we're doing on the entrepreneur side and what we're doing on the college
Learning
program learning side. So we try to separate those, although we're housed within the same building, in the same facility, under the same Bow Valley umbrella, under the same department. The Entrepreneur Center has a separate business plan, separate marketing plan, And this particular CARES grant that we're applying for is to fund that entrepreneurial.
So don't misunderstand
Yeah.
my question. It's related directly to the same book of business insofar as I can see. So Siksika Youth Initiative Employment and Training offers programs at no cost to Siksika youth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's entrepreneurship-based training in many cases.
That's great.
Right. And so also Old Sun Community College does all kinds of community-based entrepreneurship, entry-level learning for people. And there may or may not be a cost in that. And Community Futures has offered enormous amounts of training, relatively no cost.
No cost.
To the community. And so I guess I would like to see that outlay. Before we outlay money, I want to make sure, number one, that everybody has a opportunity for consultation and collaboration, that there is no overlap in the services, and that we understand that we're moving together in full cooperation. And I want to see the outlay in terms of the cost.
Yeah.
So that we know that our community is getting the best possible service.
And that's, again, where I come back to that division of mandate on the entrepreneurial side and the purpose of this grant. The grant itself is to kind of continually jumpstart kind of what we got going on here, to leverage what we have in Strathmore, to benefit the community in Airdrie as well, and take the learnings that we have available to us from Airdrie and apply them to Strathmore on the economic development piece. We do have a business plan in place for the Entrepreneur Center that will eventually become self-sustaining so that we do not have to continually come back and apply for grants. So as part of our business model, we sort of feel like we're a startup for startups in developing that and trying to create some type of revenue model so that we can become self-sustaining and not require.
That is what Community Futures does now. That is exactly what Community Futures does. The second question, my final question, Your Worship. You mentioned in your presentation that the town gets, putting in $40,000 gets $40,000. So the town actually, that's in our bank account?
No, it's a matching for the grant. We
So
were
it's in
saying
your
that's-
bank account for you to run the program?
It's for
Yeah,
the project.
to put towards
Thank
the
you.
project.
That's all I have, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Cox?
Hi there. Thank you, Your Worship. My questions are a little bit, I'm a little bit naive, and I'm on your project expense breakdown. And I'm just wondering, well, firstly, I'm confused as to this Strathmore Airdrie. If Strathmore's giving you, if Airdrie's already committed the 30,000,
Yes, it has that.
how come they aren't committing 40,000 like you're asking from us when they're a bigger center?
First off,
Yeah.
one of the biggest differences is the website itself is around a $10,000 input in terms of what they've already created. That's the website that we showed you. So that was something that we wanted to have as a tangible for Strathmore alone, because Airdrie's, of course, already created that. Also, the fact is the different phase and where we're at. Airdrie's just starting. So, I mean, we haven't even got anything but workshops going there. So the intention is to have a plan for them to build what we already have here. And so they're
wouldn't that
actually
mean-
investing some money in
Does
what
that mean that
Strathmore.
they should be investing more?
Potentially, the fact that they will probably be investing more when we get to the point where we're building a space, because we haven't built an actual entrepreneur center there, which is the intention eventually. So Airdrie's come to see our facility, so we would like to take a template and create a larger center for Airdrie. So when we get to the point where we're ready to renovate or build a new space, they will be asked to put in more money at that time. This is to get the creation of the facility itself, which wasn't done with Strathmore. We did it the other way around. We built it, and then we figured out how to operate it and do all that part, where we're doing it the opposite with Airdrie.
Okay. And so you kind of touched a little bit on the website being that it's the 10,000, but what about the multi-phase program development? I'm not clear on to why they,
Because they already have an entrepreneur training program called Smart
Airdrie
Start.
does?
Yes, it does, yeah, which is an initiation training. So ours will be specific for our entrepreneur center, and for Airdrie, the need is not to have that initial entrepreneur training because they already have that in place. So ours would take it from their point on. They put through about 20 entrepreneurs a year through their Smart Start training program.
But their Smart Start training program is not through by Bow Valley
No,
College?
it's actually run through the city.
Okay, and my final question, I guess, is more along the line of, if we give you $40,000, are we shown exactly where that's been spent in Strathmore?
Yes.
I don't want any
Yes.
blurred lines as to,
It would be two separate, like we would have two projects, one for Strathmore, but it's actually done under one grant.
so just curiosity-wise, why are you showing us Airdrie?
For a couple of reasons. First of all, this regional grant is actually meant for economic development for Alberta. When we contacted them, they were really ecstatic that we were actually taking two communities and putting a project forth that would benefit two communities. One, of course, with you guys wanting to develop economic development more, Airdrie will assist in that process through working with the EDO and so on. And then Strathmore, or Airdrie wants to have what you have with the Strathmore Entrepreneur Center. So we were looking at those two communities as learning from each other and growing towards a common goal of having an entrepreneur training center in each area. So we're leveraging two communities. We could have done two separate grant applications, but they were excited and happy that we were putting together two communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, is this like this project expense breakdown? Is that like that's just a one, like our money basically is just gonna go towards covering 1 year of expenses, is that correct, with this grant?
Yes, about a year, exactly. We have 2 years to spend, but we're looking at getting to that phase four by within a year time.
So you believe like you will be self-sustaining in 1 year?
Yes, we're already
That's
working,
our
that's
goal.
what, yeah. We're starting the memberships base, which is what our model is to have memberships is where we're trying to get to the sustainability.
Okay. Okay, that's all my
Well,
questions.
we've already invested 9 months of doing the pre-work, really, so the college has, so the fact is that we're already starting at a point where, we've been put into learning a lot of the pieces before we are ready to launch it, so we're ready to sell and get the memberships going and that kind of thing, so.
Sorry, and so you'll be selling memberships to individuals or like a company or something like that?
Actually, the whole basis is to sell memberships based on need for entrepreneurs. So, for instance, we have, people who might want to only come in for 2 hours a week, and they have the facility usage based on their need. And instead of saying just come in for a month and buy one office space and stay here, we're really making a flexible model. We took a lot of time to determine how that would work in terms of being able to let different entrepreneurs that have different needs.
Okay, so one of the things you're gonna be offering is renting office space
That's
to
a piece of it, yes.
entrepreneurs?
Yes.
Okay,
So
We have three pieces to our revenue. One is delivering business workshops and courses.
Right.
The other piece is these memberships. They are designed to be very low-cost entry into someone having a professional space to either have their meetings or do their work. So it could be a home office that someone wants to get away from the distractions or whatever. They could come work. There's a co-working space with a very low cost. Then we have several part-time options that people can utilize a private office for a number of days per month.
sure.
And then the top package being, or the top membership being that they have basically the keys to that office door and that's theirs that they utilize. We recognize that there's a lot of empty space in town already being offered, offices for lease and things like that are not full. So we're wondering that, or trying to fill that gap and help businesses kind of grow in the early stages. Maybe they can't quite afford that $700 to $1,000 office space per month, but they could afford a $200 professional space that they can be very productive in. And then we provide, the standard coffee, tea, water, internet, all that kind of stuff. for them. Plus, they have access to a lot of the training for discount or for free, depending on what it was.
Okay, and so like, I'm sure you're probably aware, there's like not even a block away, there's that other place that offers
Yep.
office space to, like, kind of on the same idea.
Yep.
Do you know, like, are you guys gonna be offering it for less than that place or more, or?
We're trying to create the funnel that will help fill that place. So our goal is that these small businesses, as they start and grow, that they would eventually become financially able to then move out of our physical space and into theirs.
No, but I mean, like, cause there's a place, like, not even a block away,
Yeah.
where like you can rent, a room for a couple hours or something
Yeah.
like that. Isn't that like, basically what you're talking about?
Yes and no. The difference with our space membership model is that they also have access to a lot of resources
Right.
and training, and this hub that we're trying to develop, part of this ecosystem contact. So if somebody came in and they needed some loan information, we would, connect them with Community Futures, for example, because that's what they do, or ATB Business. So just kind of being that point person that's always there to say, hey, what do you need, and kind of connect people with other people and build this thing,
Okay,
little hub.
okay, all right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Deputy Mayor Bauer.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Kara, for coming in. My spouse went to a workshop on social media, and it was very well attended. These types of workshops really empower entrepreneurs and give them the building blocks to develop successful, sustainable businesses in our community. I really see great benefit to our community, and I'm thrilled to see you guys applying for these types of provincial grants and partnering with Airdrie. And I have seen the economic resource website, and it's extensive. It's definitely something that I believe that we will be able to use and use as a launching pad for Strathmore, and I see a lot of value there. I don't know quite if the town of Strathmore should be putting in more than Airdrie. Can you just talk to why you put that value proposition? Like, is it just the website that you thought cost $10,000, so that's why you put us at 40 and them at 30, or were there other reasons that contributed to your decision?
Part of that is as well because of the phase, like I said, the development phases. So because Airdrie is really putting in at the very beginning. Okay, so their initial, if you look at the phase the phases, we're refining and we're getting Strathmore's more concrete, and Airdrie's starting from scratch. So we also felt that the amount of money, they are actually also going to be hiring 2 people. Okay, so we've already put the money forth as a college for Jen's position, for instance, so the college is leveraging that percentage of the grant for Strathmore. We are not putting that forward for Airdrie.
I think I actually agree with Councillor Cox then that perhaps they should be adding a little bit more to the amount that they're participating with. How many people do you anticipate serving with this program?
How many?
How many people do you actually feel that you will be able to impact?
Well, to date, we've already had we have 11 workshops and events to date with close to 300 people. And our membership base, we can maximize about 25 members to keep, that would be full house. That would mean we would not be able to have any more than, and that's just for people utilizing our space on a daily or hourly basis. And then in terms of having workshops and everything, we plan on having a calendar of events that is created, and that's partly what we're working on right now, so that we would host events almost every day of the week. So, we can have 60 people in our space. If we were ideally could have everything full, thousands of people could be affected by this.
Thank you very much. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. It's a very interesting concept, and I appreciate the fact that throughout your presentation that you've repeated the words regional and partnership, and those are very important to us as well. So when I think of those 2 words, and I think of this facility in Strathmore, I also think that it would be expanding to other governments, to other areas very close to us. That's Siksika and Wheatland County. And I'm just curious as to whether or not there's any intention to apply to them for financial support as well.
With Wheatland specifically, we did, because I've been working with Shauna Lawson, who is doing the economic development strategy for Wheatland. And we just, because they're just at a sort of a planning phase for their economic development strategy, we didn't feel that this grant would maybe apply at this time, and certainly for future for Siksika. You know, we would put forth maybe something specific for entrepreneur training, but we're working on other initiatives at more of the college side right now. So we want to focus on that with them at this particular time. However, there's lots of future entrepreneur initiatives that are, you know, impactful for the Indigenous community that we could layer on from here. And we have an Indigenous lead that works specifically with our Treaty 7 nations. So that is something we've talked about as a secondary phase for this. This is also going to look at being templated in our other regions, which are 7 around Calgary. So Strathmore was the first to have it. Airdrie will be the second, and some of our other areas will be applying in the future for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councillor Cox, I just had one quick question, and that is, as far as the 40,000 that you've requested, do you need the official commitment from the town, or, for example, do you need the 40,000 immediately, or is it the commitment that would be the important thing to get the grant application in?
Yes, it's a commitment. It can be a letter, minutes, approval, an email even.
Okay.
The money itself would not be required until they give us the money, which is not for 90 days, so it's anticipated not till February or March of 2019.
Okay, and then the second part is, would you need the 40,000 immediately, or could it be phased in periods of time?
Yes, it could be phased in.
Okay,
They
all right,
just
thank you.
During that year time for it to be, and for now, it's a commitment, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Cox and then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, I just thought of a couple other things I need to ask you. Again, naive, but with respect to this CARES application, and I know that for some grant applications, some, not all, staffing can't be included. Are you aware that, is staffing allowed in this CARES grant?
Yeah.
It will cover staffing?
Yes, we actually, we've spoken with the officers that screened for the grant, as well as Lisa Houle for Calgary, the Calgary region. These roles are actually part of doing the duties that are required for marketing and all those things, so they would be covered because they're a part of contributing to the project. So operationally, they will not fund more than 20% of an existing employee, which is Jen. They won't go above that, but with layering and having new employees to accomplish marketing and all the tasks that we're saying are required, then that is supported with the grant.
So they'll cover 20% of hers and the full administration?
Correct.
Okay. And then my last one again, and sorry, because I don't think it was quite clear when Councillor Peterson asked you, you're a for-profit organization, correct?
No.
You're a non-for-profit?
We're non-profit.
Okay, thank you.
This is the first, the college has actually embarked on that. We are running mini business within the college, but it's not meant to be money driven. It's an entrepreneur development. So we are not there to make large amounts of revenue. It's to cover the costs of what we do, which is what the college does.
So not non-profit?
Non-for-profit, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Peterson?
Just to follow up, though, from what I heard from Bow Valley College, there may be a profit motive in that people who come into your entrepreneurial programs may go into your mainstream college process, which would certainly then add to that, but that wasn't what I was going to talk about, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that I support this process in principle, but I really believe that building entrepreneurial capital doesn't exist independently of social relationships and social practice. And at this point, anytime I write lots of grants, anytime I write a grant, I need letters of support. And at this point, I don't see letters of support from the agencies and businesses impacted in our community through this initiative. I don't see that here. For me to support that, I need to know that that collaborative piece is firmly in place. And it might be, I just don't see it here. And I do not know that the cost differential proposed by your project is sustainable in our community over time. So if I were to see those two things, I would certainly be able to consider this and get behind it fully. Thank you.
Thank you. So do you, would you have any information as far as meeting some of Councillor Peterson's comments as far as support from other agencies and groups regarding your application for grant and the Entrepreneur Center?
Yes, we actually have a large amount of letters of support that are out right now that we're just getting signed off. It is part of the application process, so they are needing to be gathered in both communities. So economic development is of course in Airdrie's providing. We will be asking for the chambers and all of the organizations we're working with right now, as well as part of the application process. We're just in the middle of doing that. We have
Okay.
until the 31st to get it.
Councillor Peterson, are you looking for specific names or specific entities?
Well, I'm asking specific to our community and the one, and to our neighboring community, as Councillor Sobel highlighted. There are probably others beyond the ones that I mentioned, but those are the ones that have commented specifically to me, although not the county, and so I really appreciate you bringing that up. But and just a note, in terms of economic development planning, the county's in pretty good shape compared to us, I think. So there's no excuse.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Do you have any that you could share with us who have been given, or who, you don't have, you're just in the middle of collecting them?
We're actually just
Okay.
put them out. Do I have them
But
in my
obviously-
hand? But if you want to know a list of which ones that we've asked
Okay.
for.
I'd be happy to.
Now, I'm just wondering, you need the commitment by the 31st of October? Is that what you had said earlier?
Confirmation.
Confirmation of commitment. So
If
we
we
don't
see-
meet on the 24th or the 31st, so, yeah, but we don't have a public meeting at all as far as a commitment until the 7th of November, and that would be too late for you as far as a commitment from us.
And we would have to submit it with that being a pending, which is, I mean, it's a week after, but they said if there's things to wrap up, we can, but they would rather have everything in place, of course, with other number of applications. But if that's not something that we can receive due to the time's constraint, then yes, I get it.
So are you folks comfortable with a commitment pending statement to when you're applying for the grant? Because obviously we can't meet till the first
Yeah.
Wednesday of November. Okay. All right, so we'll wait to hear more information, and Ms. Sawatsky, I imagine you'll stay in touch with Jen Sawatsky as far as that first Wednesday in November? Thank you very much. Do you need a motion to accept all this as information, Jen? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us tonight, to come forward and tell us about the idea for the Entrepreneur Center, and we wait to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And that brings us to, oh, sorry. Brings us to item 5, confirmation of minutes. 5.1, minutes of the October 3rd, 2018 regular council meeting.
So move, your worship.
We have a motion from Councilor Peter to accept those minutes. All in favor? Motion is carried. 5.2, the minutes of the September 19th, 2018 public hearing. Deputy Mayor Bauer has made a motion to accept those minutes. All in favor? That motion is carried. And 5.3, minutes of the September 20,
September 5th.
September 5th, thank you. September 5th, 2018 public hearing. A motion from Deputy Mayor Bauer? No. Councillor Corbeil.
I move that council adopt the minutes of the September 5th 2018 public hearing as presented.
Thank you for that, Councillor Corbeil. All in favor? That motion is carried. I don't believe there are any tabled items this week, so we have business administration. 7.1, affordable housing Bayside Plan is on page 29. And that is the Director of Corporate Services, Mr. Teedy. Welcome again.
Thank you, Your Worship. The town of Strathmore sponsored an affordable housing in 2010 wherein 48 affordable housing, 2 and 3 bedroom units were constructed to qualify to purchase a unit in the project. The town contributed $1.9 million cash plus $102,000 of land value to this project. One of the concepts of this project was that it be an affordable housing project in perpetuity. This was accomplished by having the contract place a second mortgage for total purchase price, giving the purchaser an opportunity to have first-time home ownership with a low down payment. The second way was to require potential purchasers to purchase as long as they qualified. Both the original and subsequent purchasers needed to meet the income threshold, income no more than 130% of the core needs income threshold. At the time, were originally to the public, 48 second mortgages were placed on the town. The total value of the is town 2.4 million. The average amount per mortgage just over $50,000. 47 of the 48 mortgages remain in place. Mortgage
But so even just like the money that they've put in themselves towards the first mortgage, they walk away with all of that, regardless of what's happening with the second mortgage?
Well, the pay down in principal would be theirs, yes.
Okay. Okay. I'll be honest. I don't believe this is kind of goes along with the spirit of the idea of kind of giving these people like kind of the opportunity for home ownership. As Councillor Cox pointed out earlier, home ownership is it's an obligation to kind of maintain your own property, and because we are essentially acting as a bank, I don't believe it's the bank's responsibility to provide upgrades or amenities to properties.
That was in camera.
Right, no, but the point still stands, though, that that it is the homeowner's responsibility to maintain their own properties, I believe. And that's all I have for now. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Deputy, sorry, let me just double check. Councillor Sobel.
Actually, I think it was your.
Sorry, Councillor Sobel, if I could stop you right there.
Yes, I have stopped.
Councillor Corbeil
Yes, sir.
did light up, that's a bad way to put it today. Councillor Corbeil did light up before you, so we'll go to her and then you. Ba-dum-bum.
Thank you, Your Worship. For the record, I did not light up today. But whatever, each to their own. So when we did this project, there is a condo association, right?
Correct.
And they collect condo fees for some of these purposes. Like, I can understand, I think, the fence, but I'm going to be honest, like, I don't see a reason for us to put in over and above things that maybe should have been done at time of build. Like, because they collect their fees, and that's kind of their cup of tea. I don't think that that's really ours. I don't know if it's our responsibility to. Is there a reason that you would recommend, or, well, one of the recommendations is to do the 47,644?
No, it's not.
That's just to protect our investment?
Yeah, 8,000.
No, there's two on the recommendation.
The first one's the reserve.
First one is the
Proceeds from the second
reserve,
mortgage.
only
I
for
see.
town purposes.
I see. Oh, okay, I see. Okay.
Because that is the amount of money we received
Right.
on payout.
On that house, yeah.
Rather than
But
it
that's
just
not-
going
That's not
into
relevant to this, that's right. It's a separate-
unallocated
Yes. Okay,
surplus.
that's where I was
You're right.
confused. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you got it.
That's all, thank you.
If I could just quickly follow up on Councillor Corbeil's comment there, when you consider bringing this amount of 47,644, that's to create our own reserve?
That's correct.
And do you see us as a partnership in this situation now that I know you've mentioned you want to protect the investment, but do you see it almost as a partnership?
I think the town at least has some social responsibility towards affordable housing. And by recapturing the second mortgage payouts and having them set up in a reserve would keep that in front of council as an opportunity in the future to recycle and reuse that money in some way, shape, or form in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you. First of all, I could not agree with you more on your comments that you just made. We do have a moral responsibility, and 8 years ago, when this project came on, that was the exact philosophy of our council at the time, was we felt we had a moral responsibility. And that was to provide a second mortgage to these properties, to allow individuals who perhaps couldn't afford to own a property the opportunity to do so. We partnered with the provincial government. Their funds made up a fairly large portion of the funds that we used to set this program up. But at the end of the day, it's very important that we remember that we did not rent these houses to anybody. we're not a landlord. We are the holder of a second mortgage, period, unquote. And it was simply our effort to assist people to own a home. So they have a condo corporation. I'd really like to know. It'd be interesting, and it's certainly not our responsibility. But if there was ever a reserve fund study done for their condo, and if we can pass that information on to the condo board, I think it would be worthwhile. It's something that is required by law, and it would assist them, I think, in regards to determining what, if any, repairs are required that they feel are present with their condo. But no, I'm in concurrence with the idea that this is not our cup of tea, and I don't feel that the town has a responsibility to be providing funds for repairs. Simply as that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Deputy Mayor Bauer?
Thank you, Your Worship. Hello, Mr. Teedy. How are you today?
Thank you. Good evening.
So with the $1.9 million of cash plus land value of $722,000 that the town contributed to, does the town still own the land around the condos?
No, the land is owned by the condo corp, and the units are owned by the individual homeowners.
So as a condo corp, they have been receiving the condo associations for 48 units over the last 8 years. Is that correct?
They've been receiving,
The condo fees for 48 different units over the last 8 years.
that's correct.
And what is the average amount of a condo fee?
300. I don't know.
I can't speak to what.
Let's say it was
they've
about
been-
$300.
That could be the current amount. I'm not sure what it's been history-wise.
So is that about how much they have in their bank account right now to be able to use for infrastructure, maintenance, and other things around their property?
They have not supplied us with their financial statement or a study, reserve study, actuarial reserve study they've performed yet.
One of the things I really believe, and yes, we do have a social responsibility, and I believe that that was fulfilled at the time where we were able to set up people within our community with low-income housing. If they can apply and if they meet the criteria, they will have a home that they can be proud of. But I do believe a condo board is set up for the purposes of helping to maintain those properties. And that's why they pay condo fees. And so I think that at that point, the town should step back and allow them to have the autonomy like I do when I purchase a house. If I want a fence or if I want additional sheds and that type of things on my property, I pay for it. So I would think that the town no longer has a responsibility to pay for these things.
Thank you to
Thank
Deputy Mayor Bauer, thank you. That takes us to Councillor Peterson and then Councillor Cox.
Your Worship, I was wondering if you wanted a motion at the time, because we do have a decision before us. We could make. I want to say prior to this, like there are two recommendations here to dealing with two very separate issues. Speaking to the first, I could not be more in agreement that setting up a reserve. Councillor Cox and I sit on the Wheatland Housing Management Body, and we hear on a monthly basis the need that exists in this community currently. And we have a director of social housing in this community that's second to none. She does a remarkable job in finding affordable homes for people. But we still have 75 families equating to more than 200 people, last count, without adequate housing in our community. So the need, as Councillor Sobel mentioned, is significant. And when I hear it coming from a frugal, responsible individual like yourself, not cheap, just frugal and responsible, it carries just that much more weight. So I am prepared, Your Worship, to make a motion on the first recommendation before us.
Okay, then just for clarification, after you've made the first motion, there can be further discussion on that motion.
Absolutely. Your Worship, I would move that council authorize the establishment of an affordable housing operating reserve and transfer the amount of $47,644 to the reserve.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this motion? Councillor Cox, did you want to say anything on this one? I haven't had a chance to weigh in, and one of the things that I wanted to say was that as far as this reserve that we'd be creating for ourselves, I understand that we want to maintain and keep the property up to a standard that would be good, but I also agree with the idea that the town of Strathmore has helped already by providing the land and the second mortgage, and it's being held, and now we've had one sale where we've got some of that money returned to us. I believe there's been a lot of years of condo fees being collected for the 48 units, and I'm under the impression, or I'm under the thought process that I don't necessarily want to see us contributing to a reserve that when there's already one established, and I would much rather see this 47,000.
Order, Your Worship? I think you missed something that Mr. Teedy said.
To-
This has nothing to do with the condo.
This is ours.
But it does have to do with the condo, because we would use it to do work, would we not?
No, it's a new fund to establish local.
Oh, for a future condo, is that what you're saying, Mel? Can I get clarification? Okay, well, then that totally undoes everything that I was saying, and I will unspeak that.
No, I could.
No, I thought the motion was to try to support the current reserve fund that they have. Okay, perfect. So is there any more comments? Okay, all in favor?
Well, I'd like to say something. I do support the idea of setting up this reserve. I think it's prudent to do so. I hope that for this kind of particular instance and, the other one that we were discussing, I hope that we come up with a better system in the future for affordable housing and dealing with affordable housing with that money. So that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? All in favor? Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. And then I guess we can have the second motion come forward.
Well, I do have something else.
Oh, you want to say something else?
But if Councillor Cox.
Councillor Cox and then Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to this second part of the motion about the expenses and so on and so forth. I think that I do agree, they have been contributing their condo fees, but we also have to remember that 8 years, not necessarily were they all sold. Not necessarily was there anyone in them. And that because we can't determine what the condo fees were, and assuming that they were affordable housing, my gut would tell me that they were quite low. And always remember that condo fees cover water, electricity, and heat first. The only thing that goes into their reserves, which I believe you already know what their bank balance was, did you? Is extra. So it is imperative to remember that 8 years worth of condo fees at $300 probably didn't happen.
175, I think.
And that we do have somewhat of a social responsibility in the sense that if they can't afford to live there because their condo fees are too high, then we've done an unjust service as well. Just my points of reference.
Thank
May I
you for that.
respond to
Yes,
that?
so we can.
So I have looked into the cost of each unit, the condo fees, and they also pay utilities over and above that. They pay utilities to EPCOR. So it is not part of their condo fees.
But there would be some portion.
It would cover snow cleaning and that type of thing, but perhaps electricity, but the water is paid directly to EPCOR. And then they would pay, of course, their own internet and that type of thing.
Thank you for that clarification, Deputy Mayor Bauer. Councillor Montgomery?
So when somebody's finished paying out the first mortgage, what is the mechanism by which they would start paying out the second mortgage to the town? Or does that only get paid out like in a lump sum or something like that?
It would only be paid on demand by the town, or alternatively as by the owner if they had a desire to pay it out. There's no obligation
No obligation.
to make monthly payments
Right.
to the town on the second mortgage.
Okay. And the other question I have is, when these were built, who was the original funder of building these? Like normally, obviously when a condo building gets built, they sell the units, as it's being built or before it gets built. So were these units all pre-sold to these low-income buyers, or who was kind of footing the bill for the actual construction of the building?
The town, as part of their contribution, paid the contractor, the construction contractor, during the construction period.
And so you're saying the town, essentially, like, the town hired the contractor and kind of came up, like, approved all the plans and everything as well?
I can't speak to whether we approved them or not, but I can tell you that we did make payments to the contractor over the life of the construction contract. And that's all I can tell you about that part of it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess what makes this recommendation compellable to me is that in the discussion notes, you note that the town does have a financial interest in preserving the project as an ongoing affordable housing project into the future. And the amount that's set down here is quite a small amount. Do you think that it is conducive to kind of recognizing, that we have some skin in the game and that this might assist them in moving forward to keep that viability of this project going, that it would be viable?
Well, certainly the $8,000 is not a large amount in the total relative scheme of the whole project. We do have an financial interest, as I've said, of $2.4 million less the one mortgage that's been paid out. So it's in our own interest to have these units maintained at a high standard. While we are not obligated legally to do that, we do have, as you say, some skin in the game. We do have over roughly $2.4 million of receivable at some point in time that we would like to get back and recycle that money and use it for other affordable housing projects. If this project goes downhill and market values drop, our second mortgages could become reduced because of the lower market value. It's in our interest to try to prop up and keep up the market value and ultimately be able to recover on the second mortgages.
Thank you very much. Your Worship, would I be permitted to make a motion at this point?
I would just like to ask one question before that, if
Yep.
that's all right. My question would be to Mel. I understand that we have a vested interest in this, but would we be setting a precedent by passing this, that we would be agreeing to a 50% contribution on this, and then in future things that come to us, we'd be also looking at that kind of a commitment?
Not when I do my motion.
It would depend on how the motion is worded as to the future. The motion could be passed subject to this being a one-time event, could be passed subject to the condo corp filing with us the study, if they've done a study as far as their own actuarial potential costs into the future.
Thank you. I guess I would just feel a little more comfortable if I knew what their financials were, if we knew what their reserve was. Councillor Peterson, did you want to make your motion?
Your Worship, I would move that council authorize a one-time payment to Bayside Villa Condos 1111683 Condominium Corporation of an amount of $8,640, representing a 50% contribution towards the actual cost of fencing and bike racks with funding from the Affordable Housing Operating Reserve. And that proof of a reserve fund study relevant to the low-cost housing operation be presented to council prior to the money being released, and that the condo board provide at the end of the 2019, or prior to the end of the 2019 fiscal year, provide proof of spending of the money designated for the project.
And just for clarification, that was 2019.
Correct.
Instead
I
of
think it would
18.
be reasonable, 2019 fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Now that the motion's on the floor, discussion, Councillor Montgomery?
Like, if I could ask Mel a question, and I guess pardon me for not understanding this very well, but, so, I know that some of the units that have either listed or have sold, sell for like, around, let's say, 170,000. So if there was a $50,000 second mortgage on it, can you just walk me through what exactly and who they can sell that unit? If they're trying to sell it for 170,000, is that 170,000, is that contingent on like that kind of low income threshold, or where are they getting the 170 from, and how is that affected by the $50,000 second mortgage? Is that on top of the 170,000?
Point of order, Your Worship.
Councillor
I'm not
Sobel?
sure why we're going down this road. It has nothing to do with what the issue is.
So you're saying we should focus specifically on this
On the
motion
motion
that
that
deals
we
with
hear.
the 50% contribution on the fencing
And I
bike
say that with
racks?
respect. I just don't know why we're going down mortgages. It's got nothing to do with whether we pay for a fence or not.
Oh, well, I'm just trying to understand, I guess, what our moral obligation is. But I do take your point, so if you'd
Okay.
rather continue, that's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Are there any other discussion points or comments? So we have a motion.
I do have
Councillor Sobel.
one point, I guess. I'd be more favorable of this motion if I knew what their reserve fund is. We have nothing in this meeting that has indicated what their reserve fund balance is. I'm not sure if they've got, I don't know what they've got. So until I knew that, and I won't be supporting this motion, I could certainly relook at it if we got that information.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. So we have a motion on the floor. I believe we've all heard it.
Could we repeat it? Could you repeat it, please?
Ms. Sawatsky, thank
Worship,
you.
I will try. I have that council authorize a one-time payment to Bayside Villa Condos 111683 Condominium Corporation of an amount of $8,640, representing a 50% contribution towards the actual costs of fencing and bike racks with funding from the Affordable Housing Operating Reserve, and that the condo board provide to council proof of reserve funds relevant to the operation of the complex prior to the release of funds, and that the board provide prior to 2019 proof of spending for the above project.
Thank you for that.
Just before the end of the fiscal 2019.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. You've heard that motion. All in favor? Opposed? And the motion is defeated. Deputy Mayor Bauer.
Your Worship, I was wondering if we could perhaps ask Mr. Teedy if he'd be able to come back to us and perhaps bring us a valid amount that the condo association currently has. Is that something that we can access?
So Deputy Mayor Bauer, are you asking then for administration to contact the condo board to see if they would provide us with information? Mr. Thackeray, is that something we can do as an administration? Okay, so that'll come back to us as further information then.
Thank you.
And would you be able to do that in a fairly speedy process? As soon as you're able to? Mr. Thackeray?
Sorry, Your Worship, would you like that in a motion, please?
Deputy Mayor Bauer, do you want to put that in a motion to direct administration?
Yes, I move that council direct administration to approach the Bayside Villa Condos 1111683 Condominium Corporation to investigate the amount that is currently in their condo reserve fund. Thank you.
Okay, you've all heard that motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Deputy Mayor,
Nope,
she
nope.
stole your job. Councillor Peterson.
I'm just wondering if we have a right to ask for that information.
I wonder the same.
I think that I just want to say for the record, I think that's an intrusive, wrong thing to do. We wouldn't ask any other mortgage holder to do that. I don't know why we're doing it here. We're a mortgage holder, so but they're the owners, right? So does that give us the right to ask that question?
I'm only asking
Is it-
it because we have a vested interest in this property and they're coming to us for money. And so I'm wondering whether or not we can revisit this proposal after we know what their amount is that they currently have.
Mr. Thackeray, I guess we're looking for some direction on that.
If I may, Your Worship, I think if the council is correct in requesting some due diligence, and I think that's appropriate under the circumstances. They're asking us for several $1,000s, and at this time, I'd like to, if with council's leave, I would recommend that we need to do some more due diligence on this. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Thackeray. Councillor Sobel.
Just, if there's a confidentiality issue, I would not have any issue with receiving that information in camera as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So did you want to add that to your motion, that it be presented in camera? Is that necessary? No? Okay.
It was their choice.
All right, thank you. So you've got a motion on the floor.
Just a clarification, so it's not going to be,
Okay, so I would like clarification too. We have this motion on the floor, and we don't need to have it in the motion that we want it presented in camera to protect any privacy? Okay, thank you. So you have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And opposed? So we have 5-2 in favor of that last motion. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Teedy. Item 7.2, the organizational structure on page 36. Mr. Thackeray, are you speaking to this one? Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Just recommend that stems from the Committee of the Whole meeting last week. This is the proposed new functional organization chart, which was proposed before council. As noted in the chart, we've moved legislative services, human resources, economic development, corporate communications and marketing under one new department, as proposed in the document which is attached to your package. And the second element is the part of an EA for the CAO office, as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Council, you've all seen it in front of you. Councillor Montgomery.
Okay, I have about 36 questions about this. No, I'm prepared with a motion, actually, so.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much, Councillor Montgomery. I look forward to hearing the motion.
I will solemnly move that council approve the proposed organizational structure as presented.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Deputy? Oh, okay. All right. All in favor of that last motion? And the motion is carried unanimously. And we now move to policy, item 7.3, policy number 1101, Council Committee Governance and Appointment Policy, page 41. Ms. Sawatsky.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, administration is bringing back policy 1101, Council Committee Governance and Appointment Policy for approval. This policy was brought to the Council Committee of the Whole meeting at the October 10th, on October 10th. The policy was reviewed by council, and only one change was made, which was 2 advisory committees, and that was to remove remove voting from councillors on those committees, and you'll see that that has been changed in the policy in front of you. And that was, just to clarify, that was for advisory committees only. council members will still sit on those committees, but they will not vote.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I do, but I see that Councillor Corbeil has a question.
Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Worship. No, there was just actually a quick concern, because when I was going through the committees, or advisory committees, like the Emergency Management Advisory Committee, that's a very, very small committee of basically us and the people over there. And if, I guess we don't need motions, I guess we can still advise, but I just don't know if there's anybody left to vote. That's
Right.
why.
So I do have an answer for that. So the second part of this whole process after adopting this policy will be to review the terms of reference for each of council's committees. At that time, if there is not enough members to vote on items, we may have to change membership for public members on those committees. But that will be coming to council at the next council meeting for their review.
Councillor Corbeil, follow up?
Just quick, yeah, follow-up. So in the meantime, then how did those committees function, basically, if we're taking away?
Get along.
It's hard. No, it's not hard. I'm just saying, like, in the meantime, what do we do?
Your Worship, so we are providing for an extension of all committee appointments for those committees for a month. And also, what we can do with this policy is make it in effect as of, at that time for the end of November.
Thank you for that. Councillor Montgomery?
So I just had a question with regards to the chair committees. Will there be a number of different meetings with chair people to sort out committees, or will they combine some? So because I guess these two people, the two councillors that are chosen, they're gonna have to meet with every chair individually, is the idea?
So that is the idea, yes. So there's kind of a two-step process for appointing public members. The first process revolves around appointing chairs. Council will now directly appoint chairs to the committees. Once those chairs have been appointed, they will be involved with making nominations to council for public members for their committees. So they will have to, yes, they will have to attend the nomination committee procedures and processes and meetings.
Okay. Okay, and so just to be clear, so that the councillors will sit in on the, let's call it the committee drafts or whatever, with the chair people, or the chair people will select and then make those recommendations to
No.
the council?
So there is the nominations committee. So whoever's appointed from council to the nominations committee will sit in with the chair from that committee
Okay.
to review applications for public members.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson?
Would there ever be an opportunity to have a committee, like an advisory committee, act by consensus? Could that become a term of reference?
Yeah.
Through the chair, may I ask Councillor a question? Are you wondering are you saying to act through delegation via consensus? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Your Worship. So through the chair, I have sat on ministerial committees who act by consensus, especially if they're in an advisory capacity. They act by consensus. It's just a different way of doing business.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. If
No, it's
It is-
not. It's up to legislators. You're the boss of this.
I'm not supposed to admit that publicly.
To answer Councillor Peterson's question, yes, it is possible, subject to the terms of reference and any edges that you wanted to put around those terms. Thank you.
Thank you all. So you've heard all the discussion. We're looking for a motion.
Sure, I can.
Councillor Cox?
I'm only doing first part.
And no adverbs.
Thank you. I recommend that council approve policy 1101, council committee governance and appointment policy.
Thank you. So you're dealing with these as two separate ones? Two separate motions? Ms. Sawatsky, yes? Okay, thanks, Lisa. All right, you've heard the motion on the floor. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Cox.
Your worship, if council so chooses, they can do the second part of that motion during their organizational meeting.
That would be good. That would give a little time for people to whisper to each other more.
I'm ready for the motion.
You
Your
are ready
worship.
for the motion.
I would rather have it wait till our organizational meeting.
Would that be all right with you, Deputy Mayor Bauer, if we
Oh,
just put it
absolutely.
off to the organizational meeting? Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, we'll go on to 7.4, Private Wastewater Treatment Facility Policy, page 59. Ryan,
Thank you, Your Worship.
welcome.
Mr. Fisher sends his apologies. He's feeling a bit under the weather today, so he sends me to do this in his stead. I will try to make this really brief tonight, though. This is one that we discussed, I want to say 2 weeks ago at council, regarding the implementing a policy that would effectively ban private sewage treatment facilities in Strathmore. At the time, council had no comments, and so we'll bring this forth for consideration and, if council so wishes, adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Roycroft. Councillor Peterson.
Your worship, I would move that council adopt policy 4204, private wastewater treatment facility prohibition policy.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Roycroft. And that brings us to 7.5, Project Blue Sky Feasibility Engagement, page 77. And you're here with us again.
Thank you, Your Worship. I hadn't planned for that to move that quick. All right, I will. This is something of a different item, and I think it's a very exhaustive report, so I'll try not to repeat what's in it. Council has asked staff to, over the next year to 18 months, to begin exploring what a recycling program for Strathmore looks like. And one of the challenges that I think council brought up during discussions, and I think that a lot of communities that are engaged in blue bin and other forms of recycling, whatever that takes, is regarding the market for recyclables. There is concern certainly about the sustainability of the market and what that continues to look like going forward as, sort of, for want of a better word, buyers of recycled materials drop out of the market. This is one that in discussions with waste management and other professionals has come up again and again. So with that in mind, staff, administration have looked at different options for this, recognizing as well that this is sort of a new area, that there are a lot of players in the space, and that that caution is absolutely imperative, and that a really measured approach, looking to experts wherever we can, is required. So in discussions with a service provider, has offered we'll call it a semi-proven technology, whereby, and again, without going into too much detail, what we call blue bin materials are essentially broken down and repolymerized into what we, biodiesel, naphtha, and kerosene, with the real value product there being biodiesel. This is a technology that is proven, however, not proven at a commercial scale. Again, the report talks exhaustively of the risks, but the key is it begins to make the economics of recycling look a lot more palatable for the community and establishes a long-term market. It's also something that can be entered into with a partnership with Waste Management, whom staff have been working with, as well as the service provider, to sort of put Strathmore a bit ahead of the curve. With that in mind, however, it is an unproven technology, and rather than rush into it, as municipalities are often encouraged to rush into a lot of these kind of, for whatever, blue sky type projects, staff would instead prefer to have this vetted by really professionals with a degree of sophistication well above ours. I don't pretend to be, I minored in biochem, but I don't pretend to be an expert at this stuff. And so have talked to PricewaterhouseCoopers, sort of an internationally renowned consulting firm, about vetting the technology. From there, PwC is interested in the project. They do see that this is a growth market and feel that, based on their tours of the plant, that it's well worth vetting. However, also turning to the federal government's Green Municipalities Fund to fund a portion of the cost of the feasibility study. Again, recognizing that the GMF experts on this, again, provide a degree of expertise that we can't. So it is the opinion of staff here that this is an emerging issue for Strathmore. It's one that, as we move into recycling, we want this to be a profitable and sort of fulsome venture for the community, and one that we can grow and even take advantages of markets elsewhere. However, recognizing that we need to be really cautious and bring in experts wherever we can to de-risk the process. So what staff are requesting for council is consideration of this plan and then authorization to move forward with the application to the GMF, the Green Municipalities Fund, for funding for the feasibility study. And if and only if this funding is successful, then the municipality would put in half the cost of the study. Staff, and we do have our contract officer here as well, are prepared to answer a lot of questions on this. This is sort of a new ground, and we really are, it's exciting, there's a lot of potential. However, we really want to take a cautious, measured approach on this and seek expertise to help guide us through this.
Thank you, Mr. Roycroft. Councillor Peterson.
When Andrew was speaking here with us, and I asked him about this, he said that we weren't big enough. He didn't think. So you think maybe there is another that this is worth looking into, because he seemed to indicate that there was huge possibilities, but he wasn't sure that we were big enough to look at any kind of bioremediation of waste.
Your Worship, that's a big part of the concern, is the commercialization of this technology and whether Strathmore and surrounding markets. I think if we were to proceed with this, we would begin to look at surrounding markets. However,
so that's my second question. So when we do this, will we look at doing this grant in coordination or collaboration with the county to look at vermicomposting and other phyto methodologies in terms of all of the feedlots and everything that is around, and it would just be a big win for everybody if we could do that, because Alberta has some pretty loose standards in terms of settling ponds, and 1 as opposed to 3 in terms of feedlots, and if we could harness that, and we could use agrarian land to do it and not put large populations at risk, I see a huge potential for collaboration.
absolutely, Your Worship, and we're very much in baby steps now, and I think where we're at right now is wanting to make sure, first, that our service provider, Waste Management, is supremely comfortable with this, as well that the technology is viable, and then starting to build that coalition. It is my feel, and it's just my feel, that Strathmore alone probably isn't there, but we can begin to bring in partners and expanding there. And probably the big cost item to this, in my mind, is, in addition to the viability of technology, is looking at what sort of level of effort is required for sorting the materials, and if that makes it cost prohibitive. So there's a lot of moving parts here, and this is why we're excited about this, but we don't want to sell council a bill of goods. We don't want to build false hope here. We want to bring in experts in this instance.
It's a small amount of money to take a look.
Thank you, Mr. Roycroft. Anything else, Councillor Peterson?
No, thank you,
You're good?
sorry.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Am I understanding this correctly, that we would have to put up half the cost of that?
Your Worship, with regards to that, the resolution, I think it's passed through many hands, and it's a bit unclear here. It would be that the town would contribute half of the cost of the feasibility study, if and only if GMF were to participate. So we wouldn't be asking council to contribute the whole amount. If GMF doesn't want to play ball, then staff would recommend stepping back at this time.
And so the fee from PwC, is it 55 and we're applying for a grant of 55?
Your Worship, and I will look to Mr. Officer for a nod here. The cost would be $55,000. We'd be applying for a grant of $27,500.
Okay, so that should be reworded then?
Do you mind if I reword that just a little bit? So the 55,000 would be specifically for the feasibility.
Okay.
So the cost would be for $55,000 for the feasibility exclusively.
Okay.
And that could be 50% of that cost, in all likelihood, subject to the gym funding.
Okay. Okay, so we should be saying that we should be applying for a grant of 20, you said 27.5? Okay. Okay,
Yeah. And, yeah, I would say that's fair. As a starting point, that would be fair.
okay, all right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, thanks. This is really exciting stuff. I'm trying to figure out what the feasibility study is going to tell us, and the problem I'm having with that is, if one part of the feasibility study is whether or not the town of Strathmore can hold an operation like this, and we don't know if we have any partners, that information could actually be erroneous unless we knew the scope of what this is.
Your Worship, with regards to that, I think with regards to that, what we'd be looking for from PwC would be sort of an indication of what market size, based on their expertise, would be required to make this sort of a go or no-go. And, so they would have, based on some of these I've seen, based on a market size of X, this would be the expected financial result based on X plus 10,000, this, and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
So we'd make absolutely sure that would be part of the feasibility study.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Deputy Mayor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've always been impressed, Ryan, that Strathmore always seems to be on the leading edge of composting and recycling, and H&H Hugstead did such an amazing job with bringing us a real provincial gem in terms of a recycling facility. And so I'm excited about this feasibility study because I think it could mean a lot to our town. But I have some questions, and I just don't know, is there a market for these materials right now?
Your Worship, may I clarify that question? So is the market for the materials in terms of recyclables, or
So the
market in terms
renewable
of the
biodiesel and the naphtha and the kerosene?
Your Worship, with regards to that, of course, that would be confirmed by a study, but absolutely. The federal government mandates that a certain percentage of every liter of gasoline sold in Canada, my age shows there, be blended with renewable biodiesel. So a percentage of every liter of diesel sold in Canada has to be renewable, and that percentage is only going to creep upwards. So there's a strong market for that. And again, prior to any business starting up, there would the provider would enter into a long-term contract for that. So if they couldn't get the contract for selling this to a refinery, they would back out of the project. But right now, there's a very strong market, and GMF feels that there'll be a strong market on that for the foreseeable future.
So it's sustainable into the future. And how many employees would it employ? Like, would it be a big production facility? Have you looked at others in Alberta?
Your
So we would be one of the first.
Your Worship, with regards to that, yeah, Edmonton has something on a vastly different scale. We spoke to, with sort of their pilot plant, and it wasn't a vast number of staff. I want to say they figured in the 12 range?
Anywhere from, and again, it's a modular design, right? So, and this is one exclusive tech.
Yeah. No sitting.
Yeah, no sitting. My apologies. Hi, welcome back. So, Your Worship, the great question. It depends on the technology. So the technology that is on the table right now that we are evaluating is one technology that creates the same byproducts that we're talking about, okay? The technology that we're talking about right now, that could be anywhere from 2 to 12, but again, that's modular. So depending on the scale that we are talking about from a feedstock and throughput standpoint, that would dictate how many full-time employees are associated.
Okay, and my last question is sensitive because we've gone through a lot of different problems that the town has had in this area. I just need to ask, would it smell?
Your Worship, that was my first question too. The answer is no. It's not a The techniques used, the concern would be in sorting and that sort of stuff where the smell would be, and that's something we'd have to make very sure of. However, the actual physical process that they use would not have an odor or. Yeah. So no, that was
Thank
my
you,
first
Ryan.
question. I'm not up for that fight again.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. I think we go to Councillor Peterson and then Councillor Montgomery.
Just very, very quickly, if we decided to, if Price Waterhouse came out and they looked at this community in its entirety, and they actually wanted to look at bioremediation and vermicomposting, and they looked at this huge agricultural base as well as our other bio base, that could change the game completely, and then it would be a different modular system, right?
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Montgomery.
So we went to that environmental seminar last year, I believe it was, and there was a biodiesel company there that was going to be locating somewhere in Wheatland County, I believe. Do you know if we would necessarily be competing for material with that plant?
Your Worship, with regards to that, based on what we know now, we're not sure of the status of that. However, that would be something we'd have to look at. The market assessment would be a big part of this, because the last thing that we'd want to do would be to rush into this and find there's no insufficient feedstock or something. So the feedstock assessment would be a big part of this. At this time, I don't know enough to give a real answer to that.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Sobel.
I have a motion, Your Worship, if you're ready.
Thank you very much for that.
Excuse me, point.
Sorry?
Mr. Thackeray?
Could I add one quick suggestion, if I may? First, if I may, I'd like to thank Ryan and David for working, especially David worked really hard on this, and it's really innovative and it's really cool, but there's a lot we don't know about it. But thank you guys, it was really cool. The second item, we'd like to suggest that we draw our share of the grant from financial stabilization. So if we could include that in the motion, please. And with the total price is 55. If I could suggest that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Thackeray. Councillor Sobel, did that help you?
Yeah, certainly, thank you, James. The grant is for 55,000.
Your Worship, the
Or
grant
did
would
I
be
miss
for
that?
half of $55,000. Yeah, the draft resolution there is a bit garbled. My
Yeah,
apologies.
okay. So the
grant would be for
27.5.
half of $55,000.
Your Worship,
Yes.
Ms. Sawatsky?
I do have a resolution drafted if council needs help with making one.
Why don't you read yours and maybe I'll adopt it?
Okay, sure. I have that council provide administration approval to engage PricewaterhouseCoopers to work through a feasibility study for a cost of $55,000 to evaluate whether the town of Strathmore could establish a regional waste management processing facility which converts black, green, and blue bin waste materials into renewable biodiesel, naphtha, and kerosene, and that the $27,500 and that $27,500 of the cost be funded through financial stabilization. And that administration apply for a grant in the amount of $27,500 from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to help fund this study as proposed with PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky. Councillor Sobel, are you comfortable with that?
I got stuck on the lack of our 27.5 would be contingent on the grant being approved, and I don't think that's in there, is it, Jen? And do we have financial stabilization in there? Yeah. Okay. And just a minute, we may have another change.
Can we change the word renewal to renewable, please?
It's going to be my longest motion yet.
Just to clarify, right, it's a little bit of a different spin. It's the same, but different, right? It's a time.
Sorry, Jane, could you go again, please? Sorry.
Can, yeah. Do you want me to read the whole motion over? Okay. That council provide administration. Okay, so I've changed the first motion a little bit, so yeah. The council provide administration approval to engage PwC to work through a feasibility study for a cost of $55,000 to evaluate whether the town of Strathmore could establish a regional waste management processing facility which converts black, green, and blue bin waste materials into renewable biodiesel, naphtha, and kerosene, and that the $27,500 of the cost be funded through financial stabilization contingent on the FCM Green Municipal Fund grant being approved, and that administration apply for a grant in the amount of $27,500 from the FCM Green Municipal Fund to help fund the study as proposed through PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Exactly what she said.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky.
Do we have our money coming out of financial stabilization? Is that in there? Yes. Why did I not hear that? That is exactly my motion, Your Worship.
Thank you. We've all heard your motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that? All in favor of that motion? And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ryan and David, for all your work on this. And I appreciate the work of all our staff, and I know you also are going through a lot of things in your own personal lives. And I wanted to congratulate, on behalf of council, David, on the birth of your new daughter. So, congratulations. Little girl. So congratulations. Item 7.6, supplemental request to fund interim contract positions on page 83. Mr. Roycroft.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the first time James called something I've done cool, so we're gonna take that to heart.
I do appreciate it.
Your Worship, this item is, as council knows, and without going into belaboring it, the infrastructure operations and development services departments have gone through a lot of staff changes this year. And because of this, we find ourselves facing some staff vacancies. We really don't want to miss delivering services. Council has a lot of really big infrastructure projects this year. Pathways seem to be driven into my head. Ball diamonds, that sort of thing. As well, we really want to make sure that we're not dropping off in terms of service for our development applicants. So staff are requesting to sort of support this transition, that staff approve a one-time supplemental request to fund interim contract positions. So for Michael and Ryanell, just for the remainder of the year, with those funds to be drawn from the financial stability reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Roycroft. Council, you've all heard the report. Deputy Mayor Bauer.
I'd like to make a motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
That council authorize $35,000 to be drawn from financial stability reserves to fund interim staffing contracts.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. Are there any discussion points on that motion? You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Roycroft. We move on to item 8, committee reports. Are there any tonight? Oh. Item 8.1, reports from committees on which councillors sit. Ms. Sawatsky, no? And that takes us to item 9, items directly related to council. Oh, there is? Sorry, Ms. Sawatsky. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I recommend that council accept the reports for information.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion from Councillor Cox. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you for that, Councillor Cox. Thank you for steering me in the right direction, too. Item 10, bylaws.
Your Worship, point of order.
Thank you.
I just want to ask a question of you. I note that the recommendations here have split the smoking bylaw and the cannabis consumption bylaw. I have a conflict of interest in the regarding the cannabis consumption bylaw because I have a family member that is employed by one of the proposed outlets in the community. So I just don't know if they're coming forward together or separate, and just to know when I would declare conflict.
Okay, with direction from administration, they're separate? Okay, thank you. So that'll be coming up right away then. All right, 10.1, bylaw number 21-18, page 89. And we're going to be dealing with the smoking bylaw first. And Ms. Sawatsky?
Sorry, Your Worship. Your Worship, just before we start on these bylaws, I wanted to indicate to council that the numbers of the bylaws are incorrect. They should be 18-21 smoking bylaw and 18-22 cannabis consumption bylaw.
Thank you very much for that. That will help us greatly. Thank you, Mr. West. Welcome to tonight's meeting extravaganza.
Thank you, Your Worship Council. Tonight, I bring back, first off, the smoking bylaw, as discussed, and I will be definitely brief. From our conversation last week and some clarity around some of the matters with regard to the smoking bylaw, there were some changes as requested or as identified by council. The changes that were done to both bylaws, but specifically the smoking bylaw, have been identified in order from 1 through 7. And the specifics of those changes have been clearly marked for council. I have no other comments on this, Your Worship, and prepared to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. West. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I have a question about Schedule A, and and I'm probably just interpreting this wrong, but I just wanted clarification. So 4.2 says fail to post proper signage prohibiting smoking in a designated public place. Isn't smoking prohibited in a designated public place whether or not there's already a sign prohibiting the smoking?
Excellent question, Your Worship, through to Councillor Montgomery. So failure to post proper signage prohibiting smoking in a designated public place. So where you have a potential for a business to create a designated public place, however, geez, Tracy and I talked this out too, and it made so much sense.
Could I interrupt? Does this not deal with section 5.1, Mr. West, where there's a requirement for certain signage by a proprietor or an employer in public places?
Well, I think it's 4.2, isn't it?
5.1 is the one I'm looking at.
Yes, it is 5.1, you're correct, through the chair to Councillor Sobel. So it's that designated public place, there's some really close wording in here that I stumbled over 2 or 3 times, but there can be a designated public place, which is, for instance, outside of 10 meters of our public facilities can be a designated public place, or outside of 5 meters of any business, there can be a designated public place. However, if there is signage, or not signage, but they would be required to post signage indicating that it's no smoking for other reasons in this bylaw that indicate why it can't be a designated public place. I just sounded like I wanted to create a whole bunch of signage.
Well, because it sounds like, yeah, like we'd have to basically post signs almost everywhere or find people that, is that not, because like how many, like, and the other question I had was like, how, yeah, like where would we need signs, I guess, according to this?
So the way that this is written, the intent is that you would, businesses would have the opportunity to designate specific places where their employees can smoke or where their patrons can smoke outside of their business. And we've laid out the requirements and parameters around where those can be based on distance from the entrances. So I think of an example of a place where I see smoking occurring often is at the back of the King Eddie on the alley. that could be a designated smoking area because there is no public access or entrance within more than 5 meters of both of their principal entrances to that building, so that could be a designated smoking area. However, if right across the street it was a park or a schoolyard, and it was within the radius that they're allowed to have a designated smoking area, then it's got to be posted as a no smoking area. So you don't necessarily have to have a sign that identifies where it's permitted, but you definitely have to have a sign where it would be prohibited if it's an obvious space where people would congregate to smoke. Boy, that was not.
But so like for instance, like every, like all the businesses, let's say along Second Avenue.
Okay.
You're saying that each and every one of those would be required to put a sign behind their business saying no smoking if they didn't want smoking there?
No, if they wanted to permit their staff or their patrons to smoke, they could identify a designated smoking area.
Yeah.
As long as it's permitted, because it doesn't fall into any of the areas that have been identified in the bylaw. So they can permit people to go out there and it would not, for education's sake and for clarity's sake for their patrons, they would probably want to post that. Now, designated smoking areas can only be so big. It can't be the entire back of a building. It can only be 6 meters in circumference. So that would be their designated smoking area. And the other businesses along Second Avenue, whether it's on the front or the back, could choose to do the same, or sorry, on the north side or the south side of the street, could choose to do the same thing with signage, because there are very few places, if any at all, on the front of the street that would be classified as a designated smoking area because of their proximity to their primary or principal entrances to their business. However, when you get up to Bow Valley and some of the, let me think of a better example. Storefront school might fall into that area where the business is straight across the alley from the storefront school couldn't have a designated smoking area. So if people were smoking there, then they're required to put a no smoking sign up that would prohibit them from smoking in that area.
Who would be required?
The owner, the property owner is always going to be responsible.
And so you would fine that business owner $500 for the first offense if they didn't put up a sign saying no smoking?
Correct. If they were allowing smoking by their patrons or their employees in a place that clearly should not be a smoking area, and they haven't put up a no smoking sign, then that would be, education and engineering and enforcement would be our steps and
How would somebody
processes.
control like people smoking, in proximity to their property though?
They can't control anybody that's not part of their business or their own employees, but if they're patrons of their business or they are employees of their business, they have fiduciary responsibility. They have responsibility to control what happens in and around their property that they can reasonably control.
Okay. So, and then my other question has to do with nuisance odors. How will nuisance odors that are not evident at the time of a visit from bylaw be handled? Like, somebody calls and says, my neighbor's house stinks, you guys show up and there's no smell, what happens?
It would be a statutory declaration, so a legal declaration by an individual, then we would continue with an investigation. We would interview all the parties, and hopefully at that point in time, we can create some form of collaboration between neighbors. We know that that's not going to happen all the time. But as we do the interviews/interrogation, then the officers will make a determination. If it's readily obvious, if there is pungent odors coming out of the house, those kind of things, then it will be readily obvious. But if we feel that it's appropriate to carry on with an investigation and it's not just frivolous, I don't like my neighbor, so therefore I'm going to make something up and cause them grief, even if it's not the truth, which does happen a lot, unfortunately, then we'll continue on with a more in-depth investigation.
Okay. And so, like, I guess with regards to these two bylaws, specifically, what would constitute like a nuisance odor? Like, so I'm assuming, like, you know, smoke, the smell of smoke, and you said before this, like, the smell from plants as well?
Yes, Councillor, through the chair to Councillor Montgomery. I have only the information from one of the firefighters in town who is a hemp farmer and has indicated that the plants do have an odor, and it could create a concern for an invasion of someone's own personal rights as a neighbor. You know, across the alley, I doubt it, but I'm immediately adjacent to it could. So those would be the things that, when we get called about a complaint of an odor, I mean, there would be questions that we would ask, queries of the individual who the complainant has pointed us towards. And we're anticipating that if there is that type of if there is an odor, any odor, whether it's excrement from the pets or it's any type of odor. In this particular case, we'll deal with smoking in this bylaw and odors related to smoking. In the responsible animal control bylaw, which it is currently named, then the odors would be different odors that we would be dealing with, of course.
Like, is there any limit, I guess, to the odors that somebody could call in and complain about? Like, if I
No.
don't like the smell of somebody's cooking or something?
Unfortunately, there are no limits to the desire of individuals to.
But like I'm saying, like, so if somebody calls and says, hey, you know, I can smell my neighbor cooking over here, you guys would actually show up and give them like a ticket for that?
No, we wouldn't give them a ticket for that. We would show up and if it was obvious and readily obvious, we would ask them to try and do their best to, you know, close a window or do something that we wouldn't ticket them for that. That would be, again, that would be one of those cases where it's typically a neighbor against neighbor, and we will mediate as best we can and try and cause that relationship to get better or to try and cause that relationship to stay as far apart as possible.
Okay. Oh, and so I have a question about section 5.8. So I guess that'd be in the first bylaw.
5.8.
I don't see 5.8.
What was I looking at then? Oh, yeah, sorry, in the second one then.
Yeah. So we'll have to stay with the first one.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, then that's all I have for that then.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson?
Oh, just a very, very minor thing, Your Worship, on Appendix A. Just because in the offenses, under the offenses in 3.1 through 3.4, I didn't see a 3.3. I just noticed that. And the other thing is that that we probably should use the word smoking so that we have a verb to indicate action. And smoking is used in 4.2 through 6.1. So just change the word smoke to smoking.
To smoking.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's all.
thank you.
Really small. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to read this, Trent, and make sure that our public understands as well as myself. Under the definition, smoke or smoking means to inhale, exhale, burn, or have control over a lighted cigarette, cigar, pipe, hookah pipe, or other lighted or heated device or apparatus designed to burn, heat, and here's my clarification, or vaporize tobacco, cannabis, and any other plant material or material derived from plant material, or any other substance for the purpose of inhaling or tasting its emissions. So just for clarification, smoking, vaping is considered smoking, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that
For the purposes of
clarification.
this bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Sobel.
I have a motion, Your Worship, if you're
Thank
ready.
you.
I would move that council give first reading to smoking bylaw number 21, number 18-21.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Councillor Peterson? Councillor Peterson?
Your worship, I move that council gives second reading to smoking bylaw number 18-21.
Thank you. And now that we've,
With amendments, yes, thank you.
with amendments, thank you. And now that you've heard that motion on second reading, is there any discussion? Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, I would just like to say what I was saying last time. I believe this bylaw is it totally overreaches on what our responsibility and duty should be. I believe that government has a duty and responsibility to protect people from each other, but not people from themselves. And I would be able to support this bylaw if it was specific to, kind of the negative effect that it had on other people rather than just kind of trying to prohibit it in general. I could support it if it was saying that you couldn't, smoke within 10 meters of a person who didn't want to be exposed to smoke. But the idea that we should be able to say that, somebody can't go out in the middle of a field and smoke a cigarette, I can't kind of get behind that. And for that reason, I won't be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson?
And so in terms of that, I think that this is an incredibly difficult bylaw to enforce. And so that is my resistance to voting in favor of it. Having said that, I recognize that it's pretty consistent with other smoking bylaws across the country, but I do agree with Councillor Montgomery. I think it's incredibly difficult to enforce.
Thank you. Any other discussion? You've all heard the motion on the floor. All in favor? All opposed? So we have 2 opposed, 5 in favor. So is there another motion? Councillor Sobel?
Your Worship, I'd move that council give unanimous consent to a third reading of smoking bylaw number 18-21.
Thank you. And you've all heard that motion. All in favor? And opposed? So we have 6-1 in favor. So then that means we can't go on to third and final reading. Thank you. Thank you. And Councillor Peterson will be excusing herself and will be voting to see if she can come back. Mr. West.
Thank you, Council, Your Worship and Council. Before you is the consumption of cannabis in public bylaw. As previously mentioned, any of the amendments or recommendations from council related to this bylaw that were addressed or identified at committee last week have been addressed in this bylaw, and I am prepared to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. West. Councillor Montgomery.
So this has to do with that section 5.8 that I mentioned before. I'm just confused about the wording, what exactly it's trying to say. Like it says, a person who commits an offense may, if a violation ticket is issued in respect of the offense, and if the ticket specified. So I'm not sure what they may do.
Yeah, okay, so for a violation ticket, thank you, Councillor, that they may appeal to the court for a violation ticket versus a violation tag, which is a municipal one that they can pay prior to, and it's to the town, yeah. Yeah.
So it's missing may pay?
No,
May appeal.
To the court.
No, for the tag, it's the town. For the ticket, it's the court.
If there's a ticket.
Yeah, because it's a provincial ticket issued under a provincial act.
Thank you for that. Does that help, Councilor Montgomery?
Yeah, so yeah, I just wanted to, I kind of thought there was something missing there. And then the other question I had has to do with, when will somebody have to appear in court for a cannabis-related offense?
Sorry, I was going to have some fun there for a second, because there was 47 tickets issued before noon this morning in the city of Calgary. So I was going to say 28 days, but, so if they're issued a violation ticket and they don't feel that it was just or it was in error of this bylaw, then that's their choice with a violation ticket.
So we won't be compelling people, like, because I thought I saw somewhere there was a summary ticket or something like that. Is that not right?
The violation, so the tag that we discussed last week, if the bylaw, or if the community peace officer chooses to give violation tag, then the individual has the ability to pay to the town at a reduced rate within X amount of days, 14 days or 7 days, of the fee, or of the tag. If they choose to give a violation ticket, then it's up to the judge to make a determination as to, it's up to the judge.
But so, like, after like that period of time, the tag converts to a ticket, correct?
No, the tag will still be the tag. It's just that if you don't pay within the 14 days, now you're paying the full price for the tag.
Okay, so the town would collect the money regardless from the tag?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only question I had.
Thank you, Councilor Montgomery. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Sobel?
Ready with the motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I would move that council give first reading to cannabis consumption bylaw number 18-22.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Councilor Corbeil?
Move the council give second reading to cannabis consumption bylaw number 18-22.
Thank you. You've got the second, we have to have it as amended, don't we? Because we did make a change.
As amended, sorry.
Is that the first reading as well?
Yes.
Your worship, you can do it at second reading.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so do you want to make that again, Councilor Corbeil? Thank you.
The council give second reading to cannabis consumption bylaw number 18-22 as amended.
Thank you, Councilor Corbeil. You've all heard that. Is there any discussion on that? Deputy Mayor Bauer, no? All in favor?
I'd like to say.
Oh, Councilor Cox.
Yeah, I need some clarification. If we haven't passed the smoking bylaw, does that affect our cannabis bylaw?
Well, through the chair to Councillor Cox, because I've referenced definitions in the cannabis bylaw that refer to the smoking bylaw, I would have to ask Ledge Services if it affects the...
Your worship, yes, it would.
So we can't pass this cannabis bylaw either?
Your worship, you could give first reading, and then you could give second reading, and then wait till both bylaws come back to the next.
Thank you.
Councilor Sobel?
James, I was just going to say, could we not pass this bylaw if we wished, except for any sections that revert to the smoking bylaw? I'm not sure that I want to leave this open for 2 weeks.
So...
Or longer. 7th of November.
There is the opportunity, we could hold a special meeting, because we are meeting next week tentatively. If I may, I'd like to recommend council defer this to a special meeting. I think there's a few things we need to sort out to get the alignment of the bylaws together. And if I may, I think that would be in order, given that we haven't adopted the first bylaw. And I think I think there is some risk. And so under the circumstance, I would recommend a special meeting.
Thank you for that.
Or at least a deferral to the first meeting in November.
So So, Jen, just for clarification, do we need a motion now to put this off until the next?
Yes, Your Worship, you can either
Okay.
defer it, as CEO Thackeray said, to a special council meeting or to the regular scheduled
Councillor
meeting.
Cox?
Sorry, just clarification then, may we vote on second reading and then make the third motion, or no?
Your Worship, my recommendation would be just to withdraw your motion for now and defer it to the next meeting.
So lastly, Your Worship and Council, the last thing that possibly Council could consider is with the friendly amendment that was already done, where it says also reference smoking bylaw, we could just place the definitions that are in the smoking bylaw directly into the cannabis bylaw. And if it's a repeat, no? Okay.
Well, and also, like, I
Good
would
idea,
suggest
but-
that there's a lot of references to bylaw 21-18 as opposed to 18-21, so.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So, Councillor Corbeil, I think you're withdrawing your motion?
Yes, I am. I
Okay,
withdraw the
then we're
motion.
looking for a motion to defer this to the next October 24th. Jen?
Right, Your Worship. So your first motion would be that council hold a special council meeting October 24th at whatever time council determines, and then you would defer these two bylaws to that date.
Okay, so two separate motions there?
We do have that strategic plan on the 24th.
Yeah. Okay, so we're looking for a motion, council, for that? Two separate motions? Deputy Mayor Bauer?
I move to hold a special meeting on October 24th to be able to go over by smoking bylaw 18-21 and cannabis consumption bylaw 18-22.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? Sorry. Deputy,
I'm sorry, Your Worship.
Jen?
Can council please identify a time for the meeting?
okay, so Deputy Mayor Bauer, would you mind including a time for that?
What time were we planning on
We're meeting at
starting?
5 for the vision, or the other meeting.
So perhaps 4:30?
Too early?
Let's just start at 5 then,
We can take time from that meeting to just have the special meeting regarding the
at
the
5
bylaw.
PM.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And then a second motion?
To defer, it's not necessary anymore, right? Because I already
Okay.
made it into one motion?
All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And Councillor Cox, thank you very much for catching that, because that was a very, very good catch. I know you're on fire tonight. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West, which now brings us to item 10.2, bylaw number 18-23, fees bylaw, amendment bylaw. Yes, I believe we'll need a motion to possibly extend the meeting.
It's my time to shine. I will move that we extend this meeting to 10:30.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion to extend the meeting to 10:30 if necessary. All in favor? Motion is carried. And now that brings us to 10.2, bylaw number 18-23, fees bylaw, amendment bylaw, page 113. And Jen Sawatsky, are you speaking on this or presenting it?
Yes,
first?
Your Worship. Your Worship, as part of the budgeting process, administration reviews fees in our fees bylaw. There are a number of fees coming forward to council tonight for consideration. They're attached to the draft bylaw is in the report. There are changes to Schedule C, D, E, O. That's the Aquatic Center, Family Center, Civic Center, and FCSS. And there's also new fee schedules being presented to council for the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Center and the Youth Center. And we have the managers here to speak to those fees should council have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery.
I'm ready with a motion, but I just wanted to say thank you for including the family fees for the walking track only.
Yes.
Thank you. So if nobody else wants to say anything, I...
Sorry, if I could just pop in, I just had one question. Was there any consideration, or is there a chance to look at 65 plus as a smaller fee of $1 or even free? Has that ever been discussed? Mark? Just the walking track only.
Your worship, there was conversation, as we mentioned, with the Healthy Eating Active Living Coalition, HEAL. They had no issues. We circulated these proposed fees, and they seemed acceptable to the $2. As we presented to council in early September, we will definitely review all these fees through, actually for next year. And at that point, if there's any adjustments needed based on our recommendations or our statistics that we are able to, to gather, we will come back with recommendations at that time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peterson, have you heard anything from Seniors Advisory as far as rates for walking?
Councillor Cox.
Oh, Councillor Cox.
Sorry, Your Worship. I do believe it was part of our survey that was done, and I do believe that $2 was the max they were willing to pay.
All right, thank you very much. So you did a first reading motion, right?
No, I haven't done anything yet.
Okay, so Councillor Montgomery.
I will move that council give first reading to bylaw number 18-23, fees bylaw amendment bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. You've all heard the motion on the floor. All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move the council give second reading to bylaw number 18-23, fees bylaw amendment bylaw.
Thank you. And you have second reading motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that? Deputy Mayor Bauer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question. Mark, may I ask, please, with regards to the special needs fee, I was wondering if administration has ever considered to lower that fee. Many special needs people within our community are on a limited budget, and I do see that it is the same price as the youth, a 7 to 16 year, and I was wondering why you even have a special needs category if it's the same as the youth, and whether or not you would look at furthering a reduction on that.
Yes, Your Worship. Excuse me. I think these are our plans moving forward to review all these fees and their categories, and to do a full assessment in 2019 to see whether these fees are actually being utilized, and potentially eliminate some and look at potentially reducing them to a different level. That's one of our plans for 2019, is do a complete fee assessment for all our facilities. Just what we've done similar to the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Center, and that way we'll have a better idea based on the individuals that pay those fees, whether they're applicable or not.
So if we pass this particular bylaw, when can we anticipate doing another fee structure?
Our plan, Your Worship, is to begin the fee review in 2019 right off the bat.
Okay.
So that we can come back to council at some point with some statistical information and some research as to which fees are still applicable within our community.
Okay, then the other question I had was just on Schedule P for the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Center, there is no special needs pricing included.
I think this is one where we need to identify whether that need is existing within that facility. Within the pool, we've obviously had those fees, or that category exists through time, and that's where it's continued. If we find a need for that, then there's something we can bring forward to council as we start to identify whether that's an actual, need for that facility.
I would think that it would be. Just thinking of the gymnasiums that are used in the school, the Strive kids make good use of that facility, and it's very important for people who are physically disabled to have an outlet for recreation.
Yes, Your Worship, I definitely agree with you. The question will be over time whether those facilities are utilized during the day, or whether the gymnasiums are still utilized by the school through the school boards. We just don't have that information at this time to make a decision based on our recommendation to council whether that need will exist. Well, we'll need to gather some. What I'm saying is, think we need to gather some statistical information, and then we can come back to council with those needs if they're here.
And my last question just has to do with swimming. With the aquatic center, do Strathmore families get priority over Calgary and Chestermere, who are coming to use our facilities? When they come to use swimming lessons, for example, is it identified within the book, or when they call, where they're from?
At this time, we do not have a different rate for residents of Strathmore or non-residents, whether they come from Calgary or other communities. We're hoping that we're collecting information based on our users now to identify how many are residents of Strathmore or how many are outside of that. And again, that will be part of our assessment for 2019, whether it merits an increased cost or increased fees for non-residents.
Thank you for answering that, because some people have come to me in the past and just said that they believe that some of the swimming lessons are full before they're able to call, because other people are, let's face it, you can drive 20 minutes or 30 minutes and be out here. Most of the facilities in Calgary and of course Chestermere doesn't have one, are full. So to come out here is nothing for them. But it does take away a space for our own residents. So I'm applauding you that you're going to be doing those statistics. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bauer. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to address, would they not look at this when whoever we hire, like the consulting firm we hire for the recreation master plan, might not look at pricing?
That could be, Your Worship, that could be in that master plan. At the end of the day, I think we need to do a comparison ourselves, as well as analyze the statistics to see what categories are actually being utilized within our facilities, and try to make some efficiencies and reduce some of the fees if necessary, if we have that demand, or reduce some of the categories if they're not being utilized, and try to, again, make it more efficient for our users.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Peterson?
So I really commend you and Ms. Bernicki for the extraordinary amount of work and dedication to this project. And in terms of, I was questioning the special needs funding, but for the other reason, because in my work with many special need families with children with special needs and adults who fall under persons with developmental disabilities, many times, depending on the capacity that they have to engage with facility resources, that they wouldn't meet a threshold because they have funding for these kinds of programs. So it always seems to me that poverty is or marginalization is a greater driver of this than anything else. And I don't have any suggestions for you how to solve that problem with regards to the schedules of the facility funding. I really, see what FCSS has done in their book of business, and there's probably something that can transfer. I don't know what it is, but that would be much more my concern, would be to engage community to the fullest extent based on that threshold. But I like what you've done here. I still think our costs are incredibly inexpensive, but it also certainly lends itself to inclusive community.
Excuse me, yes, Your Worship. I think that's one of the categories where we want to do that analysis to see if there's ways for us to provide additional opportunities for those low-income families or low-income individuals, and how they can access our facilities. So we have some ideas in terms of trying to get some subsidies and trying to get some, based on some of the FCSS models that we can now present to, well, we will hopefully present to council in 2019. And then in terms of your comments in terms of our fees, I think, I think an assessment overall needs to be done, whether we're in par with other communities or not. I think we need to do a complete assessment to figure out exactly if we're charging the right prices.
I'd be much richer if all my grandchildren moved to Strathmore. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. And further to our discussion about seniors' costs and other costs, actually, I think it's important to recognize that we have 3-month memberships. And certainly, I would be recommending anybody that goes to the track to investigate that. A senior, for instance, if on a 3-month basis, if he was to go, he or she was to go every day, it would, the cost would be 23 cents per day. So there's options. There's very good options for anyone wanting to take advantage of multi-month memberships in regards to cost savings. And I thank you for that. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. So my question is just, does special needs include physical handicap, or is it just mental? Oh, it's physical as well? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. And I just have one question for clarification because I've been asked this. Could you elaborate or just quickly explain the difference in pricing regarding the futsal field and the lacrosse field? Just so people might be aware of that, because I've been asked that. It's on page 131.
Yes, Your Worship. The pricing of the field is based on the size of the field, not by sport. Obviously, the quote-unquote lacrosse field is a much larger space versus the quote-unquote futsal field. At the end of the day, we may have activities such as baseball that may take place on either facility or either field. We don't charge a baseball rate. We just, maybe part of our review is to charge it as Field A and Field B as instead of lacrosse and futsal moving forward. But yes, that's where our rates were based on the size of the facility or size of the courts or fields.
Thank you very much. Councillor Montgomery? No? And you had your motion on the floor, correct?
Yeah, I read the
thank
second
you.
one, yeah.
So we have a motion on the floor for second reading, and I think we've had all discussion and questions. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Councillor Corbeil?
I move that council give unanimous consent to a third reading of bylaw number 18-23, fees bylaw amendment bylaw.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Councillor Peterson?
And I would move the council give third and final reading to bylaw number 18-23, fees bylaw amendment bylaw.
Thank you very much for that. And all in favor? And that motion is carried unanimously. And on behalf of council again, thank you, Mark and Tracy, and all the people who are involved in these fees bylaw works. Linda, appreciate all your work that you guys have done on this. Thank you very much. Now, a question, urgent business. We have no urgent business. Questions between councillors and council statements? Administrative inquiries.
Your Worship, I have one. It's from Councillor Sobel in regards to the farmers market. It reads as, everyone is aware the farmers market moved from the A grounds to Kinsman Park for 2018. Is it possible for administration to discuss the results of this season with the market administration? I am curious as to whether they felt this was a successful season and if there were any concerns. It is my hope that the market will be back for another season in 2019.
Thank you for that. And Jen, as a procedural question, do we adjourn this and go into the organizational meeting?
Your Worship, administration would like to ask for a 2-minute recess.
Okay, thank you. So everyone's okay with that?
I would move adjournment.
Okay, motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Oh, no.
No.
Sorry, Your Worship, I wasn't paying attention. You cannot adjourn this meeting. Just recess this meeting, move into
Okay.
the other one, and then come back.
Okay.
Do I do? Move. I move to take a 2-minute recess.
All in favor? So we're in the regular count, we need to?
No, Your Worship, you need to call the organizational meeting to order.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call to order the organizational meeting with council for October 17th, 2018, and we're starting at 9:45. It feels like 10:45, but it's 9:45. Are there any emergent items on this agenda from councilors? No, nothing from admin. We have no presentations or recognitions, no delegations. We have no minutes to confirm. Thank you. No tabled items, and that brings us to items from administration. 7.1, council seating arrangement.
Your Worship, you need to adopt the agenda for the
Thank you.
meeting.
I didn't have you here. Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. All in favor? So we've adopted that agenda. 7.1, council seating arrangement, page 1. Go ahead. Councillor Corbeil?
I move the council confirm the seating arrangement.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion or comments concerning the seating? I know you're all in a rush to sit on my right or left. Nobody's, okay.
I would like to sit on Councillor Cox's lap for the rest of the term.
All right, we've heard the motion from Councillor Corbeil as far as keeping the same seating arrangement. Can I get a whoop? All in favor? So I've confirmed the seating arrangement. I'm going to fly along to the next one. The council meeting schedule, as presented, I think you've all had a chance to look at it. And just before we do any kind of a motion or vote, I would like to say I've talked with Jen and James at a later date in our meetings and things. If we do feel there's a need to make an adjustment or a change to the calendar that's presented, we can do that. I know there was a question concerning August meetings, so we can revisit this at a later time. So I'm looking for a motion regarding the meetings. Deputy Mayor Bauer.
I have a change that I'd like to make, please. In January, the 9th is scheduled as our first meeting. However, both Councillor Corbeil and I will both be away on the 9th. I was wondering whether council would be amicable to moving that meeting to the 16th and then having the following committee of the whole on the 23rd and then the 30th.
Mr. Thackeray?
Okay.
With respect, we'd recommend council stick to the agenda because it's well-known in the public domain.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not here, we understand that you're allowed to be vacant I can't even speak anymore.
I'm allowed to vacation?
Yes, sorry.
And Your Worship, further to that point, in your procedure bylaw, it does state that council meetings are the 3rd and 2nd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
So you don't think that there's any wisdom in adding another meeting and just putting another meeting date on the 24th of July, and then instead of adding it on a needs basis, just putting it in and taking it out if we don't need it? No, Jane's got that, she's got that pained look on her face. All right, never mind.
I do.
Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a comment, though, like in January, we start in the second week anyway, so we are kind of deviating from that.
Yes, however, it is according to schedule. And to note that,
Not that I care either way, but.
so administration is not here the week prior to that meeting, yes. And so there will be nothing for that meeting should council leave it on the 2nd.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel?
I have a motion, Your Worship.
Thank
I
you.
move that council approve the 2019 council meeting schedule as presented.
Thank you for that. All in favor? And that motion is passed. 7.3, council committee appointments. And just for public clarification and just for transparency, councilors have expressed, and we've discussed briefly and formally about the different committees they're on. So we think that we can go through this fairly quickly, but it's all been discussed and people are aware of their committees. They have been discussing them. So in talking with Jen, we thought we would go through each councilor and then just say the committees that you've expressed interest in, and then we can look for a motion to deal with the whole group at once. Jen?
Thank you. So, Your Worship, just to clarify, I do have each councillor with a list of committees that they currently sit in, committees that they have expressed interest in. So what I will do is read through the committees, and the councillors can either agree or disagree with that. And then we can put that all into one motion. We'll appoint council to the committees in one motion. So for Councillor Sobel, I have the Traffic Advisory Committee, the Sustainability Committee, the Strathmore District Chamber of Commerce, and the CMRB Land Use Committee.
Yes, and the
CMRB Land Use?
That's what she said.
Oh,
There's a new one.
No, CRMB,
the board?
board.
Board meetings, right. So if we can add that, sorry, Jen, that was my...
Your Worship, to clarify, is that for, as a,
Not as a board member, but as a second.
as a second? Okay, an alternative?
Thank you for that, Councillor Sobel.
And that's, I'm good with that, thank you.
Thank you. For Councillor Bauer, I have the Tourism Development Committee, the Downtown Vitalization Committee, and the Emergency Advisory Committee.
Does that mean that we're going to redo the terms of reference for the Strathmore Overnight Shelter?
So, Your Worship, the town does not set the terms of reference for the Strathmore Overnight Shelter. However, Council,
I thought I was on tourism development.
this is where we can have a discussion. So Councillor Bauer has expressed interest in sitting on the Tourism Development Committee. And council may also want to discuss whether or not they want to remain as an appointed member to the Strathmore Overnight Shelter.
We have that discussion now.
You may, or you may appoint someone and have that discussion at a later date.
I will accept the Strathmore Overnight Shelter as another committee that I'll be on, and with the hope of having a discussion in the future.
Yeah, she's on Strathmore Library.
That's my fault. As we got into it, I thought Councillor Peterson was on the library board, but she is not.
So we're good there?
So just questionable, so just the tourism one.
Okay, so I have for Councillor Montgomery, the Sustainability Committee and the Downtown Vitalization Committee.
So like, I'll do the nominations committee, I'm on the financial audit committee, sustainability, downtown revitalization, I'm the alternate for the CMRP, land use, and then also the Strathmore US.
Okay.
Councillor Sobel, did you want to weigh in on the, the
I'm also on the nomination committee.
You like, okay.
And me as well. There's three.
Yes. Okay, sorry, for Councillor Corbeil, I have the Financial Audit Committee, the WADEMSA, Strathmore Wheatlands Addictions Team, Recreation Facility Enhancement Committee, Emergency Advisory Committee. For Councillor Peterson, I have the Marigold Library Board, the Strathmore Library Board, the Tourism Committee, WADEMSA, and Wheatland Housing Authority Board.
Strathmore Library Board.
Okay.
And the only difference on the Marital Library Board, it does meet 4 times a year, but board members are also, all board members are expected to sit on committees as well.
Okay.
So there are committee appointments as well.
Okay, for Councillor Cox, I have the Seniors Advisory Board, Community Futures Wild Rose, and the Wheatland Housing Authority Board.
Yes, and you're making me feel very inadequate right now.
And for Mayor Fuel, I have the CMRB Servicing Committee, and the Recreation Facility Development Committee.
That's correct, thank you. So now we're looking for a motion to accept all those committee appointments as presented?
There's a question on the tourism
Yes.
committee because Councillor Bauer has also
Okay,
suggested it,
right.
and I'm not prepared to step down from that, Your Worship. I'm
Okay.
very passionate about that committee.
So, there is
Yes, I've been at it for a long time.
yeah, there's currently a tourism committee, right, that meets.
No, not yet. We haven't started meeting yet.
You haven't started meeting yet. So can the terms of reference include 2 councillors?
Your Worship, that would have to be brought forward to council as amendment to the procedural bylaw, and council can decide that at that time, but there could be, yes.
Councillor Peterson, do you think that there's any
No.
merit?
And I'll tell you why not. I'll tell you why not, and Ryan could speak to this too. I believe that there's going to come a time when the Downtown Vitalization Committee and the Tourism Committee are going to meet. And at that point in time, there's going to be a new entity of committee at that point in time.
And that'll be within the next 24 months.
Yes, I would assume it'll be within the term of this council that probably will happen, but I don't know there's any guarantee. But Ryan could probably speak to it a lot more eloquently than I could.
Your worship, yeah, if I may, and this is me being visionary and rambling back to old experiences. Yeah, when I've started economic development functions in other communities, we've always started with 2 committees and they've kind of merged. As well, the tourism committee in Strathmore, its mandate is actually to create a DMO. So my suspicion here, and it will ultimately be up to the committee, and I want to speak to that, but is going to be the tourism development committee will, its initial focus, get tourism stuff going, but also create the DMO, which will be funded separately and kind of spin off into its own entity. And then the tourism committee will be left without a big plate, for want of a better word. It's getting late. My analogies are terrible. And I think by that point we'll morph them together, mix them up. That's kind of my vision for this. Obviously up to council, up to the committee members, but that's kind of how I've been predicting this story goes.
No, I think those points are very well taken, and I like the way that vision is going towards the future. And I don't feel that I would ever think that Councillor Peterson should step down. So I will withdraw my request for that committee.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Bauer. You're a good person. So I guess we are now looking for a motion to accept the committee, all the council committee appointments as presented.
Who's on the library steering committee?
I could speak to that.
Councillor Peterson.
So the library steering committee is a bit of a misnomer here, because it's actually a building committee. It's a Schedule C committee. And so it probably doesn't belong here. It's a committee of Marigold. So it doesn't belong here. And I was appointed to that committee as a subcommittee of Marigold, not as a, and I was recommended at the time that I stepped down from that committee in favor of Councillor Graychuk because of his experience in real estate and development. And he carried a significant portion of responsibility forward on that committee. Their work is almost complete because they're ready to, they will be approaching council, I think, in the next month. But it's a subcommittee, Marigold.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Peterson. Thank you, Councillor Cox.
Do I have to read all of them?
No, just a motion to accept all the councillor committee appointments as presented. That'll be good, I think.
Your worship. Jennifer. What do I want to say again?
I would move.
I would move that council adopt, accept, appoint,
Accept all the council committee appointments as presented.
appoint all councillors on the committees as previously appointed. As presented for a one-year term ending October 31st, 2019.
Thank you for that, Councillor Cox. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried.
Worship, could I just ask one question of administration? Could there be some effort to keep these appointments up to date on our website? They're woefully out of whack at this point, and I'm just, if there was a 6-month diary date, just to have a look at them every once in a while.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely, we'll put that
Thanks.
on our radar.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sobel. Which brings us to item 7.4, public member appointments on page 13. Councillor Corbeil.
I move the council extend all committee appointments expiring October 31st, 2018 to November 30th, 2018.
Thank you. You all heard that motion. All in favor? Motion is carried.
No.
No,
Because
we're
it's
just
the new
we got
appointments.
work to do,
There's new
remember?
members.
We have that whole new committee thing coming.
Okay, that's right. Okay, I'm so shocked. All right, thank you. That brings us to the end of the organizational meeting part, and I believe we have some items that were in camera that we're going to defer.
Your worship, you need to adjourn the
Okay, so I need a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting.
I'll move that.
Councillor Montgomery has made that motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. And now we're in the regular meeting. And I believe we're going to defer some of the items that were in the in-camera portion to a later date. Jen, can you just clarify those ones?
Your worship, we're going to move item 14.2, item pertaining to FOIP section 24. We're going to postpone that to the next council meeting.
Thank you. And what about items 14.3,
Item
14.4?
14.3 we will discuss, and item 14.4 is just for council's information. So it
Okay.
does not need to be discussed.
Okay, so we do need a motion to go in camera tonight.
I move we go into camera.
Thank you for that, Councillor Corbeil. We have a motion to go in camera. All in favor? And we're now in camera